Oh, okay. That's not what I want to hear. You don't want it to be up. Hi, my name is Alex. I'm a grateful member of AA. Also an alcoholic, you know. Okay. I was really nervous. I'm not as nervous now. And then, like, that kind of made me nervous. Like, is that not, like, the most alcoholic thought? You know what I mean? Where I'm like, wait a sec. Okay. My sobriety date is May 22nd, 2014. I have a sponsor. Her name's Sarah R., and she knows that she's my sponsor. We meet regularly, right? I like to say that, right? And then I give back freely what was given to me by taking other women through the 12 steps as outlined in the big book of AA. And my home group is Drunk Sarah North. Meets every Friday, 8 p.m. You guys should come. It's great. We laugh a lot there. My service position at that group is the business meeting secretary, and I'm also the alt GSR. All right. So my first drink was like all my drinks, really. I was 12 years old. It was Christmas, and I had family. We had family in from Texas and other places. So, and like a very culturally diverse like family. My dad's side was like formerly Jewish, so we did like some Christmas kind of stuff. But the other side was very Christian, so we like had to find a way to blend. So this family comes up from the south. It's like my cousin came back from college, and she had this peppermint schnapps, and I was mesmerized by the gold flakes, and I was like, is that going to hurt me? Who cares? I'm just going to drink it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, she relates. And took that first drink, and I realized, I was like, wow, I've been holding my breath my entire life. Like, this is what it was finally to have, like, this freedom, this release, like, no inhibitions, like, always a very insecure kid and, like, nervous, like, etc. Right? And I just felt like all that was just wiped away with one drink. And, the obsession was immediate for me. I feel like I'm an alcoholic because, like, not only can I not stop drinking once I start drinking, I also cannot control what I do when I'm drinking. So it's an actual nightmare. So I drank a lot, I blacked out, and we're at the dinner, like many dinner tables, right? It's this big, huge house, and everyone is saying grace, and I've never said grace a day in my life. Like, that's not how we do it. So I'm like, what is this? So I stand up and I puke all over my dinner plate, and everyone is praying. No one has eaten. In the middle of this prayer, I puke, and I get up. I don't say, pardon me, and I just leave the room. So that's how my drinking was from start to finish, right? I came to your house, I took your shit, I ruined your place, and I left without saying goodbye. And I did that on and off as if I could access alcohol, I would do it, right? Because I was young. And I actually came to AA when I was 21, which felt really ironic to me. And it was right after my dad had died very tragically. He was also one of us and took his life. And I was pretty bitter about that, pretty bitter. Um, and so one day I was driving home drunk. It's like 9 a.m. I don't remember why I had been driving, but I was driving home drunk, and I hit an ambulance with someone inside of it. And I pulled over, and I'm stashing all these beer cans like under my seat in my car, and all this stuff. And this officer comes up to me and giving my sob story, like, oh, my dad just died and you gotta take pity on me. Like, it's the most selfish thing when I look back on it. I feel like that was one of the most repugnant things I could have done. I could not take responsibility before AA. It was impossible. It was someone else's fault. I always had an excuse for you. I could not ever, I feel like, stand in my own self and I couldn't stand myself. I couldn't take accountability. And the officer took pity on me, and I told him where I lived, and it was literally across the street. And he said, okay, I'm going to watch you walk into your apartment. Walked into my apartment, and then I immediately got drunk. It's just like how it works. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I can't tell you how many days I spent telling myself, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not. And then I would appear like it would just be liquor in front of me. It just, I could not control it. That mental blank spot is something I really resonated with in Bill's story. So the next day I woke up, and I'm standing around, and I'm like, okay, well, if I had $1 million, I would get a personal trainer because I'm vain, and I would go to rehab. And then in that second, right after that last thought, I hear all this glass break. And I was like, what is that? I go into my bedroom because that's where I keep all of my liquor glasses, is by the bedside. And this Buddha my dad had given me before he died had fallen off and broken every single wine glass, like, those other glasses, I can't remember what they're called, like you put whiskey in them or something. Anyways, um, all broken. And in that, I called a place and I got sober and I went to rehab like that day. Cause I was like, okay, I might be really stubborn and I know I'm an alcoholic, but like, I feel like if God calls, I'm going to answer. And that felt like a really intense call. Like I couldn't avoid, I'd had so many chances to like get sober or get on the right track throughout my life. And then that really felt like a very clear sign. So after I got out of treatment, I went into, sorry, I just realized my timer thing is not going. After I got out of treatment, I got a sponsor. I worked the steps, and my program was mostly like fellowship. I was young. It was Seattle, and the fellowship in Seattle for young people, even today, I feel like is really amazing. I felt so a part of, because I had felt so ostracized, for being an alcoholic, like we all do. And I grew up in kitchens, so I decided to like become like an official chef. So I went to school so I could get hired. I got a job, a couple of jobs, and I started getting really good at what I did. And this is something that I don't recommend anyone does, but I like to tell it because it's a pretty pivotal part of my story. Um, Not one I'm proud of, right? But my boss left his wife, divorced, and then he and I moved to Texas together, lived together there, and did not go over well. And when I got to Texas there with him, when we ran off together, I didn't like how they did AA down there in the South. I didn't like, it wasn't as much fellowship or this or that, or the structure was different. And I went out and I drank. I remember the day I drank, and I remember waking up that morning and just being like, you know what? Fuck this. Sorry, my bad. Oh, I forget. I do it every time when I'm on a podium. I've never not done it. So there we go. Band-Aids off. All right. So, and I went to this place called the Easy Tiger right around the corner from my work, and I just got drunk. And I remember feeling so proud of myself because I didn't finish my drink. But I thought about not finishing that drink all night. And I thought about it the next day. And that is the difference between me and an alcoholic. Like I cannot control and enjoy. It's either or for me. It's not, I can't do it. I don't know how people do that. Like to take one drink and be like, oh, I'm done. No, that's not how my story goes. So I drank for a year. My last drink was like almost a year exactly later. And it was around Labor Day ish. Like, so we always, in the restaurant industry, we work every holiday. So we kind of like celebrated beforehand. I'm at Lake Travis and I get so blackout drunk, so drunk. And my boyfriend at the time was like, you're going to be the designated driver tonight. And I swear I was going to be it. And like 2 seconds in, someone offered me a beer and I just, I woke up the next morning in different clothes and I knew it was going to be bad. My partner at the time, I like nudged him and he was just so angry at me, and he was like, ugh, you don't even remember. And I was like, no, I don't. So I got up, I'm at a stranger's house and I find this tequila and I just start chugging the tequila because that's kind of how I started my mornings anyways. And I hear someone cough in the kitchen and I just didn't care and continued to drink, get in the car because I have to go to work that day, by the way. So I got to go to work. I'm on my way to work. I'm not driving. My significant other at the time is driving. We go into this gas station in the middle of nowhere. I have no idea where we were. There was nothing around, like literally no buildings, no landmarks. And he goes, why can't you have just one drink? And I looked at him and I said, because I'm an alcoholic. And I don't know how the words left my mouth. I don't know it, but I felt it. It was like, pardon me, it was like God literally spoke through me. And it was the truth that I couldn't unsay, that I couldn't unhear, and I couldn't unfeel it. So while he's pumping gas, I'm like frantically texting these people in Texas AA, And my this woman that did become my sponsor, she texted me all night long and she's like, if you really want it, because she didn't believe that I wanted it, right? She's like, if you really want it, then you're going to show up at my house at 7 a.m. And I had to work until 2. And I did. I took a cab to her house at 7 a.m. when I got home at 2:30 in the morning. And she took me through the book right then and there. We started reading. And I wanted to tell her my sob story. I wanted to tell her all this stuff. Like, life is so hard for me. You don't know. And she was like, we're going to read the book. And it was everything I needed. Like, even talking about her, that woman saved my life. Because I got through the steps at one part. I was like on my 4th step with her, and I was telling her, she was like, oh, do you have anything that you left out? And I was like, and then we're in the car, she's driving me home, and she was like, this is your last chance. Is there anything you left out? And I said, my boyfriend beats the out of me every night. And she just turned the car around. She's like, I can't take you back. And like, I felt like I was going to my death, but it was freedom I had never known. I became homeless after that. I had no place to live. He wouldn't let me get my stuff. And I had a bicycle and a backpack. And women at my home group in Texas was 1313, by the way. She assigned me a position there. I was the greeter. Wow. I did go back to that meeting and make an amends. I used to stand at the doors, like chain smoking cigarettes, just like covered in sweat. And I would say, welcome home. Just like bitter. You know what I mean? I was not pleasant for like the first 6-7 years. Yeah, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I really feel like that's me. Anyway, so we would go to fellowship after I lost housing, and people would be like, where should I take you home? And I'd be like, oh, no, don't worry about it. I'm just going to bike, And they're like, do you have a place to stay? And I would be like, nah, I don't. And so women in AA did the most miraculous thing and showed me generosity that I had never felt in my life, where I had a place to crash. I had couches. I learned a lot about a lot of different people, women only. I didn't feel safe. So I was homeless for over a month in Texas. And if you've ever been to Texas in June, it's a heat that is indescribable. It's 113. That summer wasn't the hottest summer, but it was really hot. And I remember like looking down and being like, wow, it is wicked hot outside. And but I would just go to meetings, right? And I looked for a job. I got a new job. AA gave me all of these like skills and tools that I hadn't had, or that they had been taught to me, but I didn't listen and pay attention because drinking was so much more important. So I remember going to my sponsor's place, like I don't know, 2-3 weeks into homelessness, and I'm like crying, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like life is so hard, and like I don't think I can do this. Like, how can I do this? And she was like, I promise you that one day your experience is going to benefit others. That this story that you have, that you're going through right now, is going to help countless people. She's like, if you believe my story, I have faith in yours. She's like, do you believe that I went through what I went through? And I was like, yes, I do. And she's like, so I believe like God won't single you out. Like, why would God not give it to you? And God gave it to me, And so she read this part of the book that I'm going to read. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trust in God and clean house. So in place of anyone, she said anything. So, and I felt like I had these like intense circumstances that I had to go through, and AA carried me every step of the way. So throughout this time, though, the desire to drink didn't leave me. And I had worked all the steps. I was making amends to my family, all this, and I still wanted to drink. And I felt so confused. Like, I'm like checking the box. Like, I pray in the morning and I pray at night, and I'm of service. I have this, home group. I have a service position. I'm like, doing all the things. Like, why hasn't this obsession left me? And my sponsor told me, go back to the part of this other part, the spiritual appendix. There's a principle which is bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. And then she made me write, don't knock it before you try it. And she said, with that, my assignment was that anytime anyone anywhere mentioned anything spiritual at all, that I was to go and do it one time. I didn't have to like sign on, but I had to go and try it, and I had to be spiritually open. So keeping that in mind, I was around 9 months sober, and I ended up at this church where was a bunch of like psychic people. I had no idea. I was like, okay, my friend mentioned it. I gotta go. So I go once. This woman comes up to me afterwards, and she was like, asking me about my faith, all this stuff. And I told her, I just like don't believe that this is going to ever leave me, this obsession, talking to a stranger about this. Like, I'm desperate. And she goes, well, building faith can be so simple. She goes, why don't you just ask God to show you a penny? It's so simple. And I was like, sure. So that next morning, I'm a pastry chef at the time, and I get up. It's still dark. I'm biking to work. I'm in front of work, and I would always do this thing. I'm in front of work, get off my bike, get on my knees, and I'd pray. And I said, okay, God, I'm going to take my life, or you're going to give me a sign that you need me to keep going. And if you want me to keep going, then show me one penny. Just show me one penny and show me it in a place that it shouldn't be. I'm not talking like a change drawer. You know what I mean? I want to know, because I'm ready. I'm done, because I was losing housing yet again at that time. So get into work, change my clothes, take my clothes to the washer. Someone had left their clothes in the washer. And I was like, okay. So I take their clothes out, and only pennies fall out. And I'm talking like 16 pennies. I started, and like even talking about it still really chokes me up. Because I didn't believe in anything when I got here. I had nothing. I felt so demoralized and so broken. I had done it. You know what I mean? But it didn't take away the pain and the suffering that I had felt. And in that moment, I was completely free. And the obsession has only come back one other time, and it was during an election one year. And I got on my knees. I was like, okay, God, it's you and me. It's you and me, bro. Like, help me out. And it was lifted, right? And called my sponsor. I went to a meeting, but that was the only other time. And I still have that prayer today. I still use that prayer because it's such a miracle that, one, I'm not drunk, and two, I've come this far against what felt like very intense odds to me. So I moved around a lot. I was a chef. I did a lot of stuff. And when I was making amends to my brother at one point, it was the hardest, most difficult, most painful amends I'd ever done. My brother, at the part where I'm like, okay, is there anything I left out? Right? And how can I make it right? And he said, well, for one, you would always disappear. And he's like, and when our dad died, he's like, you just left me here, and you haven't shown up, and I need you to show up. And I said, okay, that's what I will do. And so I saved up a bunch of money, and I moved from Maine, because I'd gotten a job out of Texas, and they flew me out to Maine, and I worked there. And then out of Maine, I moved to Seattle. So I got here in 2016 and got a new sponsor. I worked the steps. And at the time, all throughout my life, really, I've always thought that I was too stupid. And there was like a big belief I held a lot, like I'm not smart, like, I'm not good enough, all this. And I kept staying sober, and I kept showing up and doing the steps and being of service and taking women through the book. And I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the line, I was like, you know what? I don't want to be a chef anymore, and I want to do what I want to do. I want to help people. So I'm going to go back to college. And I swear, like I have a dyslexia, I have a learning disorder, and I went back to college, and I did complete my degree. And I never thought I would ever do that. But AA gave me all of those tools, how to do that one day at a time. And going back to college as an adult felt so difficult. And then the pandemic also happened at that time. So it was really weird. It was a weird time. Um, so uh, I was writing my thesis. I was 2 months to like the finish line, is end of April. And I had a near-death experience. I had internal bleeding. I bled out. I died. Um, I go to a place called IAMS for people who've experienced near-death experiences. I had like a weird blood transfusion that wasn't like a full transfusion, so I was totally housebound and incapable of taking care of myself. And my boyfriend at the time had to like walk me to the bathroom. I couldn't walk on my own, I couldn't do anything. And what shook me the most was I did not think about drinking one time. Like it was like way after the fact, and my sponsor was like, "You haven't mentioned drinking at all." And I was like, "It never occurred to me." Like that to me is like the depth of the program in me, in my spirit, and in my mind, that it not wasn't ever even an option. It was like, holy crap, I got to learn to walk again. So that was a year ago in April. I am walking, which feels really big. Um, but people from AA came to my house. They like made me lunch because my partner had to work. He couldn't. He's not a nurse. You know what I mean? He fixes cars. Like that's not his. No, not his forte. And they brought meetings to my house, and people would take phone calls. But in that time, I still was writing my thesis. But what I had learned was like a different layer or a level of the 10th step. So I realized after my surgery that so much I push through so much and ignore a lot still. Like I'm still stuffing. There's no drinking, but I'm still stuffing and avoiding or evading. Because when I had this physical reminder to like show me how much I was really not present, not engaging in the 10th step, not watching for selfishness, self-pity, self-centeredness, and fear, right? I wasn't watching for those things. I wasn't observant. And what would happen is every single time that I would feel any anxiety, I would feel it right where I had surgery. And they cut me open in 3 places in my abdomen. So breathing was hard. I couldn't laugh, couldn't have the hiccups. You know what I mean? It was brutal. Not laughing, not cool. So any single time I felt any twinge of like anxiety, my body sent this like intense pain all through my body. And so what I had to do is I had to stop immediately, like the book says, but I wasn't doing before, right? And I had to recenter, right? I had to pray, call somebody, be a service. How do I be a service? You know what I mean? So I would pray for other people, right? Or I'd send a text to do all this stuff. You know, there was a way, I had to find a way through the pain, because what I really wanted was to avoid the pain. I don't know if anyone has ever had abdominal surgery, but it is quite painful, the recovery process. And I didn't like how the narcotics they gave me made me feel, because it made me feel angry, which would then ignite my pain in my abdomen. So I actually just stopped taking it, and I took the Advil and Tylenol instead. I'm not trying to be a hero. It was literally just, it was worse. So I had to spend a lot of time in that quiet, like contemplation, not just in the morning, right? And I realized during this like recovery period that I kind of thought of God as like a battery pack. Like I'm going to charge it up in the morning and I'll charge it up at night. But throughout the day, I wasn't really there. So I got very practiced in like watching. What am I doing? What am I thinking about doing? Right? And then I would also ask myself this question a lot: what is so uncomfortable about this moment that I need to escape it? What am I doing to avoid right now? And then I just breathe into it, like breathe into the discomfort and be like, okay, that's what's happening. And this other thing is also happening. Like the grass is green. I have hands that don't hurt. Like I would find other areas of reality. I felt like when I was drinking, I was never capable of that. It was so black and white. It was either good or it was bad. There was no middle ground. So this recovery period for me was really a lot about being okay with whatever's happening, right? And really coming into my own humanity. So I'll talk a little bit about my practice today and like kind of wrap it up. So today, um, I wake up in the morning, make my bed, pray, and I get ready for my day. And when I get to work down the street, I sit in my car and I read a daily reader. And then I love to journal my prayers. I don't know why, but I started getting into it like, I don't know, 8 years ago. But journaling my prayers is something that just really helps me, because I feel like I can be very and more thoughtful with what I'm asking or what I want God to work on in my life today and how I can help other people. Um, and then I sit in my car, I send my gratitude lists to this group of women, and then I meditate and I go into work. This really funny thing happened the other day. I was sitting in my car meditating with the windows down. I was like, wow, it's just a gorgeous morning, and kind of listening to the sounds of the city. My coworker comes up and she was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I looked at her and I was like, "Oh, I'm just meditating, And she was like, "Oh, I didn't know anyone did that." And I was like, "Well, yours truly, I got to do it every day, And I can bring that into my work day. And you know, I used to think all the time when I was at work, like, what can I take out of this? Like, how can I climb the ladder? Like, how can I do this and that and get what I want, take what I want? And recently I just started, which feels shameful to say, but recently I was like, wait, what about the St. Francis prayer? Like, why don't I contribute what it is that I want? Because then I'm giving it away, which is what AA teaches me. So when I'm at work, I really like to give away, like, oh, what can I bring to this meeting? What can I bring to this like problem to help resolve it? You know, um, be a better employee, because I used to be the worst employee. My God, I showed up on time and I did my work, but I was not pleasant to be around. Not not a cheerful person. Um, so I do that. I meet with my sponsor, I meet with my sponsee, have my home group, and at night I really like to close my day out. Same thing. I love to write my prayers in the evening, and I also really like to, in addition to doing like this like checklist for my 11 step at night, I really like to do another version of it. So I like have these questions that I've written out like every night that kind of tie into AA principles, where I'm like, oh, like where, like, how did I contribute in this way today? Like, what good did I bring to the world? Simple kind of questions like that. I like to ask myself 3 of them at night, in addition to doing the 11th step. And it really helps me close out the day, because as an alcoholic, wow, a lot of thinking. I'm also an analyst. That's what I got my degree in. So yeah, I'm thinking a lot, too much. So I like to wield that superpower for good, right? Like, God gave it to me. God didn't make a mistake, right? But I've always kind of used it in a bad way. Now I can use it for a good thing, to reflect on the good things that I did that day, or how I want to improve tomorrow, and not turn it inward, right? Because it says not to do that. So that's like how like to end my day. And then there was like one last thing I wanted to talk about. So in Bill's story, I know a lot of people read the other one, but I like to read this one because this is really what I have today and what I've had, what Alcoholics Anonymous has really given me, which is, today I know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. So the longer I stay here, my life grows bigger, and I know happiness at a new level every time, and not euphoria that's like temporary, right? It's like a true peace and a true joy, because I'm giving away what was freely given to me. I feel like I have a community. I have peace and contentment, despite a lot of turmoil and difficulties in my life. And so, if I could leave you with anything, that's what I'll leave with you guys. So, thanks so much for letting me share.